On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks problems are not new, and some of them are not even solvable.
This is Cooper Flagg, and you're listening to Locked On Mavs.
Nick, that's a good question.
Good morning, Isaac. All these changes, I still got my dog, Dwight Powell.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Still can't leave you.
Your team every day.
I'm going to get a city like that.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Mavs for over 10 years with my guy Isaac Harris, my co-host. Oh, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs, making us your first listen every day, being an everyday, or making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 5 to 6:30 Central. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the Mavs' loss to the Sixers. We'll talk about Anthony Davis's return, ramping up again. We'll talk about Flagg. Is he hitting a rookie wall? Talk about Max Christie. Talk about Naji Marshall. The Mavs have issues, and none of them are new. The Mavs' point guard problem is just a disaster for this team, I think. You watch a game like this, and you just realize and you see how often this team just does not have a point guard to go to plays, like to set up things, to run them into actions, to get something easy for them. Offense seems hard. It seems like a trudge. You need Max Christie driving on mismatches. You need Cooper Flagg having a flurry. You need Anthony Davis having a really good game. And those things are too few and far between for the Mavericks to rely on it. The Mavs didn't get anybody with 20 points in this game. Max Christie led the way with 18 points. And a really interesting decision by Jason Kidd. First quarter, I thought Ryan Nembhard played pretty well. He had 4 points and 2 assists in the first 3 minutes of the game, got them off to a pretty quick start. The Mavs offense looked like it was humming. Mavs scored 33 points in that first quarter, and then they scored 24, 26, and 25 points the rest of the way. And Ryan Nembhard only played 3 minutes and 49 seconds in the second half. Now, there could be an injury that comes up, maybe something that I didn't see or didn't hear about. Definitely something that to watch out for. But I thought that was interesting that he just didn't play much at all in the second half. Brandon Williams got the majority of the minutes in the second half because D'Angelo Russell's also out with an injury this game. Jason Kidd has not trusted D'Angelo Russell either, which is also part of the Mavericks' point guard problems. But Brandon Williams plays about 24 minutes in this game, 14 points, had 5 assists. A decent game, 5 of 15 from the field. He just does not shoot the three. He went 0 for 3 from 3. The Mavs did not create enough threes. They did not take enough threes. 6 of 28, another problem that just keeps coming up for this team over and over again. And this is what I mean by the Mavs having problems that are not solvable. They're not going to generate enough threes to win enough games in the NBA. Kyrie coming back, I don't think fixes that either. That's another thing. Kyrie coming back does help fix the point guard problem because I got a question today on the text line about, well, who's the most attainable point guard the Mavs could go out and get right now? Honestly, the answer is Kyrie, which is incredible. Imagine this team adding Kyrie Irving. It's like adding somebody at the trade deadline to getting him back from injury, right? We've heard that line before. But the thing is, Kyrie Irving does not generate that many shots for other people. That is something that he has been a little bit better at. He moves the ball for sure, and that's something this Mavs team could definitely use. I also don't know when we're getting Kyrie. It's January 1 as I'm recording this right now. We have not heard an update about Kyrie Irving. I've asked several people, or several people have asked me, when are we getting an update on Kyrie? We haven't. Jason Kidd a couple weeks ago said, well, we'll give you an update in a month. So they're not rushing anything at all, it seems like, with Kyrie. We did get an update from Kyrie himself. He tweeted right after the game, said, "Tribe, stay together no matter what. The journey is the reward." You have to imagine he's thinking about the Mavericks, talking about the Mavericks. But I don't know if this journey is very rewarding this season because the Mavs right now, are now 12 and 23? 12 and 23. You are 11 games under 500. And this does not look like a team to me that is adding Kyrie Irving and going on a crazy run to end the season. And that's one of the reasons why we keep bringing up and keep harping on an Anthony Davis trade or some kind of, being a seller at the deadline, the trade deadline for the Mavericks. Klay Thompson, D'Angelo Russell, maybe Daniel Gafford, maybe some Naji Marshall, maybe some other pieces. But the Mavs should be a seller at the deadline because of the games like this that you see tonight. They have some games where you look really good, and all of a sudden you go, man, I think I can almost see the plan, not the V word, the plan for this team and how it could play out. But it just doesn't work. The other thing that I think is a problem that I don't think is solvable is this Anthony Davis out for games, then ramping back up. Very strange minutes for Anthony Davis. Jason Kidd at practice yesterday said that Anthony Davis is going to be limited to 30 to 34 minutes, which is kind of hilarious because that's kind of what he averages in games. So to say, hey, he's limited to his average could have just totally been Jason Kidd tongue-in-cheek just saying, hey, yeah, we're going to limit him to he's not limited at all. Because Jason Kidd does have this very dry humor that sometimes people don't catch on to. And whenever I've been in press conferences with him, I sit there and I laugh, and nobody else in the room catches on that he's making a joke or maybe laughs at it or thinks it's funny or whatever. But Jason Kidd does do those things sometimes. All that to say, Anthony Davis, not limited to 30 to 34 minutes, played 37 minutes in this game. Most on the team, was in there a lot, and was a minus 14 in the game. The Mavs got outscored in the minutes that he played. There was a couple of stretches where the Mavs really struggled, including that second quarter where the offense just really took a dive. That was a massive issue for the Mavs, and that we'll get into a little bit later. But it's all these problems we keep talking about. Cooper Flagg, the Mavs needed some kind of flurry of offense from somebody. They got Max Christie with 18. That was great. They had Naji Marshall with 17 in like the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. Then they pulled him. And so that's definitely a thing that I was confused about. They needed somebody to go on a flurry of scoring in the fourth quarter. Didn't get it from AD. Weren't going to get it from any other guards. Cooper Flagg, that's the answer. He's been the guy that's been clutch. This game never became a clutch game. Cooper Flagg, only 12 points in this game, 5 of 15 from the field. Did have 7 assists, 7 rebounds, only 2 turnovers, but he did look like his handle was a little loose. He had a couple times where he drove and the ball got knocked away, and so he didn't look like he had his tightest game for sure. Is he hitting a rookie wall? I don't think so. I think two games, maybe 2 down shooting games, does not a rookie wall make to me. But we could be heading that direction. This is definitely something to monitor with Cooper Flagg going forward. We're at the point of the season where he's about to play more games than he played in all of college. And so I think that's something to monitor, something to look at. But all these problems all together, the point guard issues, the three-point creation, Anthony Davis being out, ramping up, all like the big cycle of that, Cooper Flagg having to be the one that bails the Mavs out every single time, and being a 19-year-old, just turned 19-year-old rookie. The Mavs with the point guard problems I mentioned. Perimeter defense, another problem the Mavericks have just run into over and over again. They struggled against this Sixers team the first time they faced them a couple weeks ago. Tyrese Maxey, 34 points. You had VJ Edgecombe outplayed Cooper Flagg, I thought, in at least in the scoring column. 23 points. Quentin Grimes, 19 points as well. Those guys just out-quicked, out-hustled the Mavericks defenders, and that's something the Mavericks have dealt with this whole time. They don't have enough good perimeter defenders, and when AD is not in there, they definitely don't have enough rim protection to make up for that. And so the Mavs just run into issue after issue after issue that are not solvable. The point guard problem, I don't think you're finding a point guard unless you bring in Kyrie, and that solves a lot of things, which could happen, but we don't know. That could be a month away. Honestly, that could be 2 months away. If he started the season March 1st, would you be surprised? If he doesn't play at all, would you be surprised? That's where I kind of am with that. So the point guard thing may not go away for another month or so. D'Angelo Russell is completely out of the rotation, even though he was out with an illness tonight, but he just does not seem to be an answer that Jason Kidd is interested in exploring anymore. The perimeter defensive problems are not going to fix themselves. Jason Kidd has tried. He started Max Christie because they needed speed on the perimeter, I believe. They played Caleb Martin like 4 minutes, and he got absolutely torched by Tyrese Maxey in the open court. Wouldn't be surprised if there's an injury from how hard he fell in that transition drive from Tyrese Maxey. They just don't have the answers for all these questions. They keep coming up in these games that they lose, and that's why they're 12-23, staring up at the play-in race, which they're only 3 or 4 games out of. They're really not completely out of it yet. They could go on some kind of run. I just don't see all these problems fixing themselves and the Mavericks finding a way to go on that run. Could it change? It happened in 2024. I said almost this exact same thing in 2024 and said, man, this Mavs defense is just such an issue. They can't figure it out. And then they did figure it out and went on this big run. It could happen for sure. I'm not seeing it from this team right now, especially the way that they're looking at this juncture. Coming up, Anthony Davis's return, ramping up. How did he look? We'll talk about him. We'll talk about Flagg and his potential rookie wall. We'll also get into this game and how the Mavs came away with the L. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season. It's going to be a Friday as you're listening to this, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour, it's your official pregame, a limited time window where something special is offered every single time. It drops right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts, so download the FanDuel app and see what you can get. It's between this very short window. You gotta get in there right away. 5 to 6:30 Central Time. Little basketball, little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. You can find all kinds of things there in FanDuel. I like to go and check out I check out some of the futures. You have NBA Western Conference winner, Thunder minus 165, Spurs plus 800. That's one that I would look at, and I would have to think about it for a second. To come out of the finals winner, Spurs plus 1,300, that's another one I would look at too. They just play the Thunder so well. I don't know if they're coming out of the West, but they definitely have a shot for sure now. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app, see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour against 5 to 6:30 Central Time. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for hanging out with Unlocked on Mavs, being part of the show, part of what we call the Raccoon Squad. Our listeners listening every single day had to explain the Raccoon Squad to an NBA agent today. Always an interesting thing when you have to explain why we call the fans the Raccoon Squad to somebody in the league, and they go, that makes no sense. Yeah, that's the internet. That's the era that we live in right now. Love it. Love the Raccoon Squad. Love meeting people at games all the time. If you see me, section 123, come over and say hi, and yeah, we'll talk about this team. I love asking the question, how do you feel about the Mavs? So be ready for that one too, because I get so many different answers. Some people feel encouraged. Some people are always optimistic about the Mavs. Some people are always pessimistic about the Mavs. Never know what you're going to hear from people. All right. Anthony Davis returns. He plays 37 minutes, which was weird to me, but maybe that's a Jason Kidd tongue-in-cheek thing. Weird to be coming off of an injury and then come back and play 37 minutes right out of the gate, too. I thought that was an interesting thing. Maybe they were so precautious with that injury that it wasn't that bad. He probably could have just sat out a game, or maybe he could have even played if it was like a playoff situation, and that he just decided to be really cautious with him, and the injury was not as bad as we all thought that it may be. So that's definitely something to monitor. But 13 points, 8 boards, 2 assists, 3 turnovers, no blocks, minus 14, 6 of 13 from the field. I just didn't feel Anthony Davis in this game. And I didn't feel the defensive presence. Those guards just kept getting to the rim. Mavs gave up 58 points in the paint. Not awful, not great either. Mavs scored 64 points in the paint themselves. But you just kept seeing the penetration from those guards over and over again. Embiid, I thought, outplayed Anthony Davis in this one. 22 points, 9 of 18 from the field. He had 6 assists as well. Man, Embiid has looked good recently. Embiid versus Anthony Davis is a fascinating matchup because they've only played 8 times in their whole NBA career. They've been in the league, a decade? And they should have played each other since they're mostly in the West and East. You should have played 24 times against each other, and they've only played 8. That's strange, but that's just the windows of these guys, trying to figure out when they're going to play. I thought Anthony Davis did not play well against him, but Anthony Davis' presence was definitely felt. You felt it in that first quarter where you go, yeah, the Mavs are just a much more competent, balanced, strong, anchored team when you have Anthony Davis back there on the back line, when you have him as a roller, when you have him as a dynamic presence in the paint. Obviously something that the Mavs could use in all these games that they've missed him, but came back in this one, didn't really feel his presence. He's ramping back up, right? That's the thing with Anthony Davis. He goes out, he comes back, he's ramping up. This is a game where we always just kind of write it off and say, well, Anthony Davis is ramping back up, so we'll see what happens in the next game. He'll probably be better in the next game, but the Mavs can't afford to have these ramping up games all the time. And so that's one of the issues the Mavs really dealt with. Cooper Flagg mentioned him, 5 of 15 from the field. He's had 2 games where he's not shot the ball well. I thought he looked tired a little bit. I thought that I mentioned his handle. There was just several drives where he struggled with the Sixers, small guards. They have these small, quick, crafty guards that can just get up into his space and deal with his handle. And so that is, I think, a thing he has to tighten up on. Could just be it's New Year's Day. These guys could be fatigued. You look at you look at the way that this team played, the way that this team defended, and I didn't see a lot of inspired play necessarily from the Mavericks. And so that definitely could be a factor, and this could be one of those games where you just go, oh, they were just tired, they were fatigued, and we'll just move on and see what happens. I just think those problems that I mentioned at the top are still too big. That beginning of that second quarter is something I was monitoring because Jason Kidd subbed out Cooper Flagg and Anthony Davis with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. It was 26-20. Mavs were up. And the bench unit, which was like Gafford, Klay Thompson, Naji, Brandon Williams, those guys went out there, and it was 7-7 to end that. And the first quarter was 33-27 in favor of the Mavericks. So they didn't really struggle without Cooper Flagg and Anthony Davis that badly in that first quarter. But then the second quarter came, and just all of a sudden it was an onslaught. Mavs got up by 8 with 11:41 left in the second quarter. Anthony Davis didn't sub back in until a couple minutes in, but even when Anthony Davis subbed back in, Sixers went on this 17-3 run, and by the time Cooper Flagg came back in, they were down 44-37. Around that, it was a little bit less, but that was a big struggle for the Mavericks. They just could not get any offense going. They couldn't figure out how to move the ball. That they just do not create enough threes. They don't create enough threes. They also don't get to the free throw line enough. 20 free throws is fine. The Mavs hit 18 of them, but if you're not going to hit threes, you've got to create some kind of advantage. And I just did not think that they created any kind of advantage in that way. Hence the problem with this Mavericks team all the time, all the time with this offense. So that was definitely a big deal with them. And then I try to monitor that the rest of the game with both AD and Flagg out. But in the third quarter they did that, and it was the Mavs only went 2-6 against the Sixers in that run. Wasn't as long. It was definitely a shorter stint. I think Jason Kidd definitely monitored that. He usually plays Anthony Davis longer in the second half than he does in the first half, and so that's something to that. There's something to that as well. Mavs got within 7 after an Anthony Davis dunk from a Brandon Williams drive with like 2:43 left, but this was not a clutch game, so this does not go into the Mavs record of most lost clutch games in the NBA this season. So that's something that never happened because the Mavs didn't get any offense going in this one at the end. And 1:48 left in the game. Quentin Grimes hits a 3. It's a 10-point game. It's basically over. And it's kind of poetic for Quentin Grimes to put the nail in the coffin against the Mavericks because that trade is just awful, incredibly one-sided. I can't believe the Mavericks sent Quentin Grimes with a pick at first for Caleb Martin. Then they got Caleb Martin back. He didn't pass the physical. The Sixers then had to send a pick, and so that all kind of settled out, and so that it kind of worked out in a way. But for the Mavericks to value Caleb Martin more than Quentin Grimes, the Quentin Grimes thing was always that he wanted a bigger deal. He still wants that bigger deal. But if I'm anybody in the NBA, you look at all these guys, the Josh Giddey's, the Jonathan Kumingas, the players that were stuck on these restricted contracts. You bet on the market. Bet on the market to have them coming back to you and be like, all right, I didn't get the deal I wanted. I'll just take the qualifying offer. And they do. They take the qualifying offer now, and they just run out the season. Now they get Quentin Grimes, who's closing these games, sometimes starting for the Sixers, and is only making like $8 million. That's what the Mavericks should have done. They'd be in a completely different place, I think, if they had Quentin Grimes instead of Caleb Martin on this team. That's my thoughts on that. It's still it frustrates me every time, but this is the last time Mavs are going to play the Sixers this season, so you don't have to hear about that anymore at all. Naji Marshall had a really good stretch in the beginning of the first quarter. Had an and one, a floater, then had another drive finish around Max. He had 7 points in the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, and then and then he got taken out. We really didn't see him the rest of that quarter. He played 5 minutes, and he scored those 7 points, and that was it. The Mavs needed any kind of offense. Jason Kidd went with Jaden Hardy late in this game because I think he was trying to drum up some offense, but we didn't see it. And you saw Naji Marshall, who had a little run, and then he got taken out. I think I would have just ridden the hot hand with Naji Marshall, tried to figure out how to keep him going because nobody else had any answers on this team. All right, are we late enough this show? I know that we're supposed to do this around the 30-minute mark, but I'm going to do it now. The Mavs also have this problem where they need these guys to have some trade value. These guys that they want to get off the team, right? So Klay Thompson still gets minutes. Jaden Hardy, he's got to throw him in there because the Mavs have to figure out a way to trade him. Caleb Martin, got to throw him in there because you got to if you want to try to drum up some trade value for him as well. He probably doesn't have any right now. Brandon Williams probably maybe in that boat. But the Mavs have this issue where they're like, all right, we've got these guys. The rotation's already limited because of injuries, but we've got to throw some of these guys out there, and they've got to figure out a way to get some of these guys to have trade value. But then those guys don't help them win, and so then they're not winning, and then the problem continues, and it just keeps cycling. And I think that's another issue the Mavs are dealing with. They don't have a GM. Maybe Jason Kidd is the shadow GM from the coach's spot with Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley as the co-interim GMs right now. That could be a thing, but I don't know, man. Same thing over and over. Second verse, same as the first. A little bit louder and basically just as bad as the first one. Mavs lose this game. Coming up, let's talk about some other game notes, some other things I saw from this game, and get into the Mavericks going forward. Coming up.
Shut it down! Let's go home! Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, let's get into the rest of this game from the Dallas Mavericks. What does this team need? They need point guard really bad. They need to figure out defense. They need to figure out what they're doing with Anthony Davis. That's kind of where I am right now with this. Kyrie tweeting, the journey is the reward. If he's talking about the Mavericks, which with Kyrie it could be anything. You never know what's going on with him in that regard, because he's invested in a lot of different things, got the Anta thing, got a lot of different things going on at once. The journey is the reward. What is the journey the Mavericks are going on? They're getting some development from some of these guys, right? Max Christie's getting a lot of run. That's been pretty good. Cooper Flagg's obviously getting to be the number one on a team at times, so that's a good thing as well. Some of these role players, Ryan Nembhard, Brandon Williams, getting a lot more run than they normally would get on a team that had the full complement of players, and so that's something to definitely consider as well. But I don't know what the reward is. Maybe he's talking about tanking, because that's where the Mavericks are right now. And if that would be the case, that would be a wild thing to say for sure, if he's talking about a potential draft pick, a guy coming in, because players don't ever really acknowledge that. Mavs right now are 8th. Actually, they should be higher up than this. Let me refresh. They're 7th now in the Tankathon standings, so in the lottery standings. They have a 32% chance to get a top 4 pick. They have right now a 7.5% chance to get the number 1 pick and either get Devonta, Darren Peterson, maybe even Cam Boozer. And that's where the Mavericks are going at this point. 7th. There's only 6 teams worse than the Dallas Mavericks right now. And the teams with more losses than them, Pacers have 28. Pelicans have 27. That pick's going to the Hawks no matter what. Kings have 25. Wizards have 24. The Mavs have 23. That's it. They have the 5th most losses in the NBA. If you're somebody that's still holding out hope on the Mavericks kind of making a run, which you go to like the actual standings and you look at it and you go, wow, they're only like 3 games out of the play-in, and they could get to the play-in right there. Yeah, they're what, two and a half games out of the 10th spot in the play-in, but they are 6.5 out of the 8th spot, which is where I think they would need to get to, and that is starting to become a gap that's way too large for the Dallas Mavericks to figure out, and for Kyrie to come back with enough time to ramp up and do all that. The question that keeps coming up from people is, should the Mavs give Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Cooper Flagg time? Should they see him? I would like to see him as a fan, as a person. I would like to see those guys play together. But at this point, what would they be playing for? Can they close that gap? I don't think so. I think that's something that now at this point, the way this team has played, the injuries that they've sustained, it's too big of a gap. With Lively being out too, Kyrie ramping back up, AD being in and out of the lineup. Gafford with his injury, Gafford was something I wanted to watch in this game too. He only played 11 minutes. He had 8 points and 5 boards, which is pretty good, but I thought Embiid worked him when they put him out there. And so another reason why Anthony Davis probably played as much time as he did, because they had to put him out there while Joel Embiid was out there. So now they're in this conundrum where you're trying to climb the standings, I guess. Clippers are starting to go on a little bit of a run. Well, they've won 5 straight games. They're still 5-5 in their last 10, but teams in the play-in: Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Blazers. I think there is a gap between those teams and the Timberwolves, Lakers, Rockets, Nuggets, Spurs, Thunder. Like the top 6. That definitely is the top 6. Unless the Clippers can really turn it around and figure it out, that's a team I thought would be up in that top 6 before the season started, but they were awful to start the year. That's a team maybe they could have broken into that, but everybody else I think is right where they should be. Warriors, I think, too, were also an interesting one where they played really well with Steph, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond to end last season, and they have not played that well with them this season yet. Grizzlies also are a team up and down, but they traded Desmond Bane, so you'd expect them to be back down. If the Mavs do make it in the play-in, you're not really scared of any of those teams, right? Grizzlies, maybe with Ja Morant and the Mavs' lack of perimeter defense. The Suns are just this hustle team that does have an elite scorer in Devin Booker, and they do get up a bunch of threes, and the Mavs would get outshot for sure in that game. The Warriors, you have to deal with couple of things. We've already seen the Mavericks play the Warriors on Christmas Day. That did not go very well for them at all. Blazers, just saw how that one went. And the Mavs, but they would have a chance in all these games. And so if you're still holding out hope, that's the hope, is that, all right, you get in the play-in, you got Kyrie back, you are going on a little bit of a run. You didn't close the gap enough to be a top 6 team or even maybe 7 or 8, but you could become the first team ever to come out of the 10th spot if you've got Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. But if you come out of the 10th spot, you're automatically only going to get to 8 to play the Thunder. Or the Spurs if they catch them. Spurs only 4.5 back from the Thunder. Thunder had this crazy record to start the season, got beat 3 times in a row by the Spurs, and now all of a sudden they look a little bit more, human, right? 29-5 is still an incredible record, but it's not record-breaking anymore. Not a record-breaking pace anymore. So that's the standing side of it. Well, if your hope is, okay, the Mavericks still can make some kind of run, fix some of these issues I talked about, you go through that. But then you go to the lottery standings as we start 2026. The Mavs only have less losses than the Pacers, the Pelicans, the Kings, and the Wizards. Wild. Charlotte has less losses than the Mavericks. Brooklyn has less losses than the Mavericks. Utah, way less losses than the Mavericks. Portland, less losses than the Mavericks. Fascinating. Which team can you out-tank from the rest of this as they're sitting at 7th right now? I think Charlotte, if they get healthy, could get LaMelo back and go on a little bit of a run, and they don't need to go on a big run. They're tied with the Mavericks, basically. Brooklyn seems like they could be sellers. They're definitely motivated to go down. The Pelicans are not motivated to go down. They went on a little bit of a run recently. Maybe they could go on another one. It's not like they're crazy ahead of the Mavericks either in the tank standings. Clippers are already going on their own run. Mavs just passed them in the lottery standings. I don't think they're going to catch the Pacers. Wizards, I don't think they're going to catch them. Sacramento is awful. That is a team with very many issues. 3 teams, really, that I don't think that the Mavs could catch tanking-wise. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets in there too. So 4. You get to 5th. If you could do that, other teams go on a little bit of a run. All of a sudden, you go to 5th odds. Your odds for top 4 pick turn into 42%. Your odds for a number 1 pick go to 10%. That's not a big enough percentage change for me to be like, all right, shut everybody all down. Let's figure this out. So the Mavs are really stuck in this 2-world space, and we feel it with the fans that I've talked to here, the ones that I've heard from you guys online. That's where we are. Mavs have issues they can't solve, and they've got a lottery standings and the actual standings that they're stuck in the middle of as well. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. We'll be back with more.